What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Brian Bafflestone, and today we are having another episode of my Deep Dive series, this time into optimizing the Order of Scribe Wizard. But before we begin, I do want to mention my sponsor. Key Book Club is fantastic. I highly recommend just joining for the 1-week free trial, downloading all 200 book summaries, and then quitting, and now you have a couple hundred free book summaries. Makes a lot of sense to me. One other note, I wanted to apologize for getting off on the wrong foot again last week with my last time with my video on the Bladesinger optimization, which I've actually taken down because even though it was actually one of my more popular videos, I felt like it just didn't fit the brand. It was way too long, and I felt like it was tricking people. If anyone wanted to look at it for Bladesinger insights, what they got was 30 minutes of me making my next character. So that's not what I want to do. I want to be more respectful of people's time. So I have rolled out a new format that we are going to do today with Order of Scribes. So what we're going to do is look at all of the subdomain abilities and think of ways to optimize them, starting with their second level abilities of Wizardly Quill and Awakened Spellbook. In regards to Wizardly Quill, this is surprisingly controversial. Online, there is a faction that seems to think it's very strong. And I have to say that I'm still not very impressed with it. I understand that there are niche scenarios where you need to transcribe a lot of spells in a short amount of time, and then yes, it's going to be fantastic. But I don't think that's going to come up too often. I think that the value of having a lot of spells is typically pretty marginal in terms of gameplay, because usually, players optimize for a particular style of play and end up casting the same spells over and over. It's mostly to power their 14th level ability, One with the Word, which consumes spell slots. So if you can get around 80, filler spell slots, you can cast it every day or use it every day. But even then, it's really not that great. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I'm just not that impressed by Wizardly Quill, even though it's absolutely 100% better than Portent, and I can totally see scenarios where it would be very valuable, and perhaps your campaign is really set up to maximize that, in which case, go crazy. And I gotta say, if someone is playing this sort of wizard, I bet the DM, takes care of them, throws more spell books their way. They encounter more friendly wizards who are happy to let them copy their spell book if it just takes a few minutes and they don't lose anything, etc. So, depending on the campaign, it can be good. As far as Awakened Spellbook, its main ability is to change energy types. And if you look at the different energy types, I put the spells and the energy types on the screen. You don't really need that many because there's a couple that are really supreme, right? Like Magical Bludgeoning, Piercing, and Slashing is resisted or immune, have immunity by like one creature in Dungeons & Dragons, I think. And some like Force and Radiant have very few. So you don't really need a whole bunch of spells. What you really need is like one killer spell per level that confers one of these really excellent damage types, preferably the, Bludgeoning, Piercing, Slashing. And then you can just turn all of your spells into that. So I put the list of good energy types up on the screen, and you can see that, like first level takes care of itself. You have Absorb Elements, every wizard does, so that gets you Thunder. You probably have Magic Missile to get Force. And I also have to say, remembering that the Order of Scribes is all about like collecting a bunch of spells, that they're probably not going to have to make too many hard choices about like what spells to add to their book that's going to get them the best energy types. They're just going to automatically end up with some good spells with good energy types mentioned or damage types mentioned, and be able to make that adjustment, which can be cool. I mean, especially in terms of Fireball, right? That's like the premier blast. It's overpowered for its level, and its main weakness is that it's fire. So if you can turn that into Piercing or Force or Necrotic or something, that's pretty solid. Now Fireball is like really, really good. It's definitely better for Scribe Wizards than really anybody else, except maybe Evokers. Then we move on to Manifest Mind. This is clearly the premier ability of Scribe Wizards. This is what really sets them apart from other subdomains. And so we're going to think about ways to optimize the mind in combat. In terms of offense, you can definitely blast out of this. But one thing that I think is unique about Manifest Mind is that it creates a weird condition where damage over time spells are probably better than blasting. So even the much maligned Witch Bolt, for example, will do a d12 per round, which on round 1 is less than a magic missile, but on round 2 it starts to surpass magic missile. And you could cast another magic missile, but keep in mind you only have so many uses of Manifest Mind per day. So if you are using it in a long range capacity where you're like 300 feet away and the people that you're targeting like have no idea where you are or what's going on, and they're just strictly dealing with spells coming out of the mind, then damage over time actually starts to look really good compared to blasting. Obviously, if it's something that you can just blast down, with multiple fireballs or whatever, that's, one thing. But otherwise, I do think the spells that I put on the screen are probably better for Manifest Mind as opposed to just straight blasting. Then we have to look at enchantments. This is another thing that I think Manifest Mind is good for, because if you can drop a charm person or a charm monster or something from relative safety 300 feet away, that means you don't even need to confront the beholder or whatever. You just send your mind in and boom, a good charm or whatever can really, swing things in favor of the party. Uh, Other cool enchantments are like Crown of Madness and Enemies Abound. These are ones that cause them to attack each other. So that can cause a lot of damage and confusion, cast from range and out of the mind. Uh, you can do like Gaius, and keep in mind that's like a 1 minute cast. So you can do 1 minute and casts and even 10-minute casts out of this mind, because if they don't know where you are, and if you're 300 feet away, I presume you've set things up where they don't really have too many options for the mind, right? I mean, they either have to dispel it or leave, and it can follow them. Uh, and a lot of times they can't go anywhere. Maybe it's like a dragon guarding his hoard. So you actually now have time to cast 1 minute spells and 10-minute spells even. 10-minute spells gets a little crazy because you can do, rituals and glyph of warding and symbol and guards and wards. And so that, it's a nice way of maximizing the effect of Manifest Mind. Summoning is another amazing option. I mean, you can drop Summon Greater Demon, or even like lesser demons and stuff, just a bunch of ones that are just hostile to everything in the area, and they can't hurt your Manifest Mind. So they're gonna just, wreck everything in the room, and you're just sitting back in safety, concentrating on it, and then maybe your party goes in and picks up the pieces. Uh, then we can think about like the defensive uses. We're gonna remember that when we're doing Manifest Mind, we're gonna want to be pretty safe. The class is pretty squishy. It's not good defensively in the sense that it doesn't have good consistent reactions like a lot of the other subdomains do, like abjurers and enchanters and such. So it's going to also have probably slightly worse defense. I think a lot of wizards like to dip to get armor and shields, but because they have to carry the spellbook, even using a shield is going to be a little bit problematic. So the point being is that they're going to want to play a kind of defensive style. They are going to want to take advantage of spells and situations that can take them out of range. They're going to want to leverage obscurement options, and I put some on the screen, but I am going to do a deep dive into obscurement here very soon. So just touching upon it here, they're going to want to be able to create cover and concealment through spells like Stone Shape and Rope Trick. Although I should mention Rope Trick, Resilient Sphere, and Wall of Force, I would talk to the DM about those, just because there might be some disagreement as to whether the Manifest Mind will work in those conditions, right? Rope Trick has this weird extra dimensional thing going on. Resilient Sphere and Wall of Force, do they block the effect of the Manifest Mind? That's probably going to be campaign dependent. So talk to your DM about that. And to bolster this kind of defensive play style, I really feel like an Order of Scribe Wizards should invest in like a stealth suite and kind of go in that direction of being able to hide and being optimized for hiding by being able to roll it at advantage and stuff with the methods that I put on the screen. Uh, and, maybe think of ways to, use it to stay out of danger while your manifest mind is out there, hopefully wrecking people. Along those lines, I think the fact that scribe wizards are supposed to be such heavy scroll users really plays into that, because scrolls are silent casting. So if you are hiding, then using scrolls doesn't reveal your position. And I think that's a pretty elegant combination that makes sense to pursue if you're trying to optimize a scribe wizard. Use a lot of scrolls. And you can also, take things like Meta Magic Initiate to get subtle spell, or you can use spells that just naturally have no verbal component and no visible origin. And I put some of my favorites on the screen. So those are just some thoughts about Manifest Mind and how to optimize it. Definitely not an exhaustive list, and I would be very happy to hear in the comments about other ways to maximize the manifested mind. I will say that in a utility scenario, I still think probably the familiar is going to be used 90% of the time just because it's so unobtrusive. But that said, there's a reason it can't be used in conjunction with the manifest mind. And perhaps your familiar discovers the enemies and a way to access it with the mind, and then maybe the manifest mind goes into after the familiar and just wrecks things through the ability to cast spells through it. So moving on to Master Scrivener, this is an ability to basically get a bonus spell first or second level and upcast it once or one level. And so we're going to want to take advantage of the fact that you can upcast this. So you can do it in two ways generally. You can either take spells that have an additional target or take spells that do additional damage. I personally feel like an additional target is stronger because by the time you get Master Scrivener at 10th level, you're probably past second level blasts, I would guess. I mean, they're probably, pretty far down in your toolkit. So something like Tasha's Mind Whip or Hold Person probably be the best options, I would think, offensively. A double invisible can be good as well. And I do think that there's some advantages to having Misty Step, because it's a silent cast and you could therefore cast it if you're silenced and grappled. But that's a pretty specific defense, and you're probably going to have scrolled Misty Step anyway. So that might not be the best use of this, daily ability. And then finally, just looking at one with the word, I mean, there's really not much to it tactically. I mean, it blocks damage. So you're going to use it in those scenarios that one time per day that you really don't want to take damage. And that can be nice, although I still think inferior to almost every other 14th level subdomain ability, even if you max it out. And you still need to go to the trouble of maxing it out, which is accumulating approximately 80 fluff spell levels in your book. That will be enough to cover using this once a day on average. And so I guess that's not going to be too hard for a scribe wizard, especially if they have a dungeon master who's, kind of helping them out by playing to their strengths. They will have a spell book full of a bunch of fluff spells, and then they will be able to use this once a day. But even so, once a day I don't think is all that amazing. But if you are playing a scribe wizard, you're going to want to maximize it and therefore get lots of spells. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the Scribe Wizard, my thoughts about how to play it to its maximum advantage. Again, these are launching points for discussion. I don't want to give the impression that I'm speaking from on high and telling people the best way to do things. I am just trying to offer my thoughts and provide launching points for discussion. So that's on you guys. If you want to mention things in the comments about how you think that Manifest Mind could be used or any of these other powers, that would be really super fantastic. In any case, thank you so much for watching. This has been the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Power Gamers Tactics Room. I'm your host, Bill Braun Bafflestone. See you next time.